Thank you, thank you. Little bit about me. I'm retired from OU. My title is like that long. George Lynn Cross Research Professor of Biology Emeritus. It's hard to write. In 1999 and 2000, we got involved with the state because the state's school board wanted to put vouchers on any textbook that mentioned evolution, any evolution, and I got involved, and that led to me being one of the founders of Oklahomans for Excellence in Science Education. If we have more time, I'll tell you about it. We're a very active organization, and as I'll mention, we've been very successful for 15 years. We have killed more creationist bills than any other state. But it's been close. At least 5 times we've won by 1 vote, and once by a veto of the governor. And I'll mention some of that. Some of you know David Groh. David's a former treasurer of our organization on our board and so on. We've gotten national praise for this from the National Center for Science Education and others. But it just shows you, and if I have time at the end, I'll talk about lobbying. It just shows you if you do it the right way, you can stop some of the nonsense. Okay, I have at the back a listserv sign up. I just want to mention we have a listserv about once a month. You can unsubscribe at any time. And there comes the guy I just mentioned. Don't pose as me again. Tell you a story about him. I was supposed to speak before a legislative committee, and I couldn't make it, and David was there. And David got introduced as Victor Hutchison. So.
Proudly, I will say.
Yeah, well. Anyway, that listserv, I managed it for many years. I just turned it over to our webmaster. It comes out about once a month. You can unsubscribe at any time. It's formatted in a way so the things listed, you can go and look at what you want to. We cover Oklahoma very well, tell you who to send messages to against bills, give you their addresses, but we also cover the creation stuff around the country and even around the world. And we have 1,040 subscribers at last count. We very seldom have anybody drop. And I've gotten a lot of praise. So if you want to sign up, we would welcome it. I want to thank you for asking me to do this, I think. I accepted, and then I looked at the bills, and I spent many hours going through them with some help. But I had to do that anyway, so it worked out. I appreciate this group. This group and the other secular and separation groups in Oklahoma City and in the state really help us in mobilizing against these bills, and we really want to thank you for that. The reason this has been such a job is there have been, guess how many bills and resolutions filed? 3,400. And that's not the end of it, because any bills not acted on last year can be carried over and brought up again this year. They can do that every 2 years. Now this year they can't do that. It goes along with the terms of the House members. And it does not include a very large number of specific appropriation bills for different agencies. And to make things worse, the House changes their rules whenever they wish. Last year they said every bill filed will be assigned to a committee, which was not the case before, which makes things more cumbersome. Hopefully a lot of bills will be assigned to the Rules Committee, where they kill a lot of them. Unfortunately, this year the Senate will allow bills to be filed at any time. In addition to that, you've got the problem that people can amend bills anywhere along the way. And that's been a real problem. Last year in particular was one. It's just ridiculous. Okay, I want to start out. I gave you the handout and I'll describe. I've made some notes there, but I want to mention a few of these. The first 3 are the 3 that our organization has been against in particular, and I don't go through a little detail. Senate Bill 21 by Senator Allen. It's called the Religious Viewpoints Anti-Discrimination Act. It has been put into law in Texas. I think Tennessee, it's been introduced in a bunch of other states and it hasn't passed. It started out, we first got it in 2008. And it passed overwhelmingly, as it always does. When any of these bills go to the floor, they pass. So you've got to kill them in committee. If you don't get them killed in committee, they're going to pass. And given our current governor and some other recent past governors, they'll sign them. Well, in 2008, it went zipping through with overwhelming majorities, and we really got on the ball and got national organizations, state organization, and lots of individuals sending messages to the governor. He met with the governor's aides and so on. And Governor Henry vetoed it. And his veto message was exactly the wording we had emphasized. So it comes down. Another time, we got the president of the pro tem of the Senate. One of the creationist bills, excuse me, was going through, and it was going to pass. And a former president, a friend of mine, who went and beat one of the Democrats over the head till he changed his vote, and we won by 1 vote. Last year, we had a very, very close thing with the science bill. The state adopted new science standards, a national kind of thing, not governmental, but formed by organizations. And it got through only because they got rid of the word climate, or they mentioned climate, not climate change. Well, we got the bill killed in the Senate Education Committee. Then one of the people in the Senate amended the bill and got it back on the last day of the legislative session. What do we do? Well, what happened is my representative, Emily Virgin, who's just great, and my state senator, by the way, John Sparks, are both very helpful. She was emailing me from the House floor of what was going on, right up to the minute, and they were rushed to adjourn, and they didn't consider it. Now, another anecdote. I'm going up to the legislature to lobby somebody, and I'm walking in the tunnel and run into a very good friend of mine, Pat Hall, who's a very well-known lobbyist, an old friend. I was in the Army Reserves with him. And we're walking in, we get on the elevator to go up, and here comes the governor to get on the elevator. And I said, Pat, I've never met the governor. Well, he introduced me, told her who I was and said everything. And we start up the elevator. I go into automatic lobbying mode. Brrr! And talk about the science standard. And she, you know, why we needed to pass it. She got off the elevator and turned around and said, glad to meet you, and I agree. And I said, yeah, sure. By golly, it got through, and when it passed, she immediately told the superintendent of education to put it into effect. So you never know. Now, I don't claim, you know, that I caused that, but you never know when something like that might happen. Okay, this bill has a long history. It would allow religion into all aspects of public schools. For example, and it's long and involved, and it says what students could give talks. And, you know, the football captain, the head of the cheerleaders, I mean, it names what, you know, I mean, it's ridiculous. It goes on and on and on. It would allow the school to say, okay, this student's going to do this, and then the school would put out a thing, we're not responsible for what the student says. Totally unconstitutional. It's a long, involved bill. I don't want to go into details. When Texas passed this, the Texas Freedom Network worked against it, and so did the Texas School Board Association, vigorously, and others. Well, it passed and became law in Texas. As far as I can find out, at least as of last year, and I haven't been able to check this year, no public school has put it into effect. Why? Because the State School Board Association says don't do it, and every attorney for every school district says you're going to be sued if you do it. Well, in the meantime, it's been introduced in a whole bunch of other states, including Tennessee and Mississippi and, you know, all around. It's strongly opposed in all these states by ACLU and Americans United for Separation Church and State. But we're back again for the 5th or 6th year. We, a few years ago, 2 years ago, Bruce Prescott and I testified before the House Education Committee against the bill. And it was unbelievable how those people lie. One of the co-authors got up and says, oh, this bill, well, Sally Kearns on the Education Committee, House Education Committee. And she says, well, this was all planned ahead of time. Hasn't this been declared constitutional? and I believe it was Representative Bennett was pushing the bill. He says, oh yeah, it's been declared constitutional in Texas. It has not. Now, do you remember the detail of the cheerleaders running through a banner in Texas, a high school banner, in that court case? Well, the students won that case, but it was decided by the judge on the First Amendment. There's no mention of this Religious Viewpoints Act anywhere in the decision, and yet he said, oh, that proved it was constitutional. Totally, that's typical. It's a long bill. I don't want to go into any more detail, but it's one that really, it doesn't address science or evolution, but it's a bad bill. I mean, it's just incredible. The next one is our old friend Senator Burkeen from down in Durant. He's an animal science major, and I often say, yeah, he really knows how to spread the manure. He's just unbelievable. I won't castigate him anymore. But this is the Oklahoma Science Education Act, same bill he's introduced again and again. He got smart this year, he thinks, and he's not smart, by the way. In the previous versions of his bills, he's always said, you know, you can't do these such as evolution, climate change, you know, cloning, and so on. This year he mentioned nothing, none of those things. He thinks that'll help, but everything else is the same in his bills, essentially. And the guy's so bright, he not only filed 665, he filed the exact same bill this year as Senate Bill 1322. Didn't even know he'd already filed a bill. You know, it gives you an idea. There's a reference there if you want to go look up in more detail on these. The National Center for Science Education covers us very, very well, and they support us very, very well. So I don't want to go into detail, and if you want to go read the bill, you go on the website and read it. And I have copies of the bills here, but, you know, it's the same old garbage. And here we go with Silly Sally Crazy Kern on House Bill 3045. She's introduced this same legislation for every year that she's been in the House. Fortunately, this is her last year because she's term limited. You might have known that her spouse, who may be, well, I don't want to castigate him too much, but he might be even worse than she is. He ran for the state Senate and lost big time. But hopefully Sally, there was rumors she was going to run for county clerk or something, and she didn't. But this is the so-called Academic Freedom Act, pushed by the Creationist Discovery Institute in Seattle, all around the country, over and over again this year, everywhere. So far, 2 states have passed it. Guess which states? Louisiana and Tennessee. And we've been able to stop it, but it's getting harder and harder. And this bill uses the same old language in all of these bills about academic freedom, as if this were academic freedom. And it would allow a student not to be punished for giving a religious answer, among other things. It's just a bad bill. It's very similar, as I said, to Senator Burkeen's bill, but she singles out biological evolution, meteorology, bioethics, and physics. This time she got physics in there.
He hasn't noticed that gravity works.
I know, yeah, exactly. Last year, this same bill, we went up, Rich Broughton, a colleague of mine at OU, and I went and testified before the committee, which was really interesting. For the first time, we had to phone the committee chair and get permission to speak before the committee. And she is Ann Cootie from Lawton, has introduced in past years her own creationist bill. So I said, oh my, but Emily Virgin, my rep, helped me get in, and I called her, finally reached her. And she said, well, do you want to know what we were going to do? And she says, okay, that's fine. I'm glad you're interested in blah, blah, blah. I'll give you each 2 minutes, which is not much. Well, at the same time, we heard a rumor that the Discovery Institute from Seattle was sending somebody to speak against that bill because the week before that person had spoke against a similar bill in Colorado. We get to the meeting and said, well, we had a special vista, but they couldn't make it. And so we're giving Reverend Kern, Sally's spouse, 4 minutes. So we did our 2 minutes each, and then he got up. He's standing up here talking about Bill, and here's his spouse sitting right here by him. And he didn't address the bill at all. He only does what he always does. He goes in and gives the arguments against evolution, which we've been hearing for 100 years or so. And NCSE also has a log there. Senate Bill 40 by Senator Thompson would allow school districts to educate students about the history of winter celebrations. This should be of interest to this group. Now, it's not really that bad until we get down the details. It would allow people to say in school, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy Holidays. Notice that Happy Holidays is not capitalized in the bill. Here's the problem. It would allow displays like a creche or whatever, the birth of Jesus, as long as there is one secular scene or symbol. Well, what secular scene? You could have a big fancy creche and one little sign over here that was secular. I mean, you know, I think that's a bad one. There have been 27, as I've checked tonight, 27 bills anti-LGBT. 27. Most of them aimed at marriage. And I've just got a few of them here. Senate Bill 723 by our manure spreader again, Senator Burkeen. The Oklahoma Religious Freedom Act defines terms that don't meet the usual definition of those terms. And the act would not directly or indirectly constrain, inhibit, curtail, or deny the exercise of religion, and includes, but is not limited to, the withholding benefits, so on and so forth, with penalties. Senate Bill 729 by Shorty, the Oklahoma Religious-Based Equity Act, very long bill, a dozen pages as I recall. It looks like to me it's an attempt at a Hobby Lobby type bill, that employers, you know, you can't do things based on their religious belief for their employees. Senate Bill 788, Senator Newberry, is an act relating to marriage. And again, it's no person who is authorized by law to perform or solemnize a marriage in violation of his or her right to the free exercise of religion, blah, 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 blah. In other words, if somebody said, my religious beliefs don't allow me to marry this gay couple, you can't do it. House Bill 1267 by Representative Walker and Boggs are almost identical to the others, earlier Senate bill on same sort of thing. House Bill 1345 is perhaps a good bill among a few, very few in this. You know, we keep saying every year, it keeps getting worse. And by golly, this year it's worse than ever, the number of bad bills that I've seen in the last 15 years. But this bill by Dunnington would prevent discriminatory practices for an employer to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or expression, national origin, age, genetic information, or disability. That's great. The problem is, perhaps, unless the employer can demonstrate that accommodation would impose an undue hardship. Kind of leaves an out there, but, you know, it might be a good bill. House Resolution 1022 by our friend Representative Silly Sally, Cockcroft and Fisher is a resolution memorializing President Obama and Congress to affirm our nation's commitments to promoting and protecting religious freedom throughout the world, and that's fine. I have no objection to that. But notice that it applies only to Christians. Why should it include all religions? House Joint Resolution 1062 by Representative Grout this is really, really the worst one in here. It would do away by calling for a statewide vote to change the Constitution to remove what's known as the Blaine Amendment. Now, Oklahoma has the strongest separation of church and state thing of any state, and it's better than the U.S. Constitution. It says that the state cannot directly or indirectly use state funds for religious purposes. And this would have called for a state vote to remove that so-called Blaine Amendment. That would be really bad. And if it went to a vote of the people in Oklahoma right now, I think it would pass, unfortunately. I keep saying if I didn't have children and grandchildren here, I'd move to Oregon where my son lives to get away from this stuff. Okay, after I prepared the handout, there were, well, let me go back and look at these others. There are 3 bills that are listed there that are shell bills. All it gives is a title, and the title is Bills on Marriage and Divorce, and there's no content. That means a shell bill can be filled in later with whatever they want. And that there's not as many this year because the Senate has prevented it, but not the House. House Joint Resolution 1059 by McCullough allows for exceptions for religious organizations to not celebrate weddings that go against the organization's sincerely held religious beliefs. It's totally unnecessary. You can't force a religious church or whatever to do a wedding they want to do. It's just it's just appealing to the worst of their constituents. Here we go again by Burkeen, Senate Bill 917, the Preservation of Sovereignty in Marriage Act. And again, it provides penalties for issuing same-sex marriage licenses and using state money to do so, and firing of judges who declare the bill unconstitutional. That you can't do that. Nothing would allow that, but Burkeen is not the smartest duck in the pond, I tell you. Senate Bill 898 by Burkeen also modifies the Oklahoma Religious Freedom Act, protecting those who break the law due to their sincerely held religious beliefs. Same old garbage, It's Joint Resolution 72 and 73 by Sandridge, and here again, Burkeen, he's become our real religious fanatic in there, would repeal the language in the Oklahoma Constitution that was used to remove the Ten Commandments monument, which our good friend Bruce Prescott and what's his name were the main litigants on that. That was a great win. But okay. Now the bad bills that I added somewhere here. Did I leave it off? No. I guess that's it. Oh no, bills added. Did I cover those? I thought I did. I got my papers mixed up. Okay. That's just briefly some of the bad bills and briefly what they involve. And trying to keep up with these, and as they go through the process, it gets more and more difficult every year. I thought I would add, and I asked if it'd be okay, to talk about what we can do, and what you can do, is lobbying. And how do you defeat these bills? And we have won for 15 years in a row only because we've been able to mobilize lots of opposition. I preach all the time, numbers do count. Most bills never get any comments. If a bill gets 3 or 4, they pay attention. I know of one guy that changed his vote because he got 3 phone calls against the bill, another guy because he got 5. Year before last, at last count, and they were still coming in to the Senate Education Committee, we had over 150 bill messages in opposition, and the proponents had none. They pay attention when this happens, and also if you get this, the leadership gets the message. If you go back and look at the Representative Kern's bill, 3045, same bill she had last year. Last year, we fought it very hard, testified before the House Education Committee, and it passed, unfortunately, but it passed 9-8. That means we had 3 Republicans come on board with us. We do get some good Republican support. Very little, but it can be critical. Unfortunately, our best friend on the Senate Education Committee, a Republican, Senator Halligan, former president of OSU, is now off the committee. He's out. He was really good help. So, we don't know. But my Senator Sparks, John Sparks, is real good, Democrat. He's still on the committee, but it gets down real close. Well, that 9-8 helped. When you get a close vote like that, the leadership may pay attention. And last year, for the first time in quite some time, we had a leadership that paid attention to some of these ideological bills and did not put them on the floor for a vote. And I've had a couple of active Democrats tell me that this leadership that we have now, the Speaker, is not that bad, even though he's, a Republican. He realizes that some of these. And we're pretty sure that it happened to 2 bills last year. Didn't get on the floor for a vote because the leadership didn't put it on the floor for a vote. They can do that. Now, they don't stop the bills when they're introduced anymore, as I said. All bills get assigned to committee. But they can stop them going to the floor for a vote. The Senate Education Committee, big time helpers. That's where most of our bills get killed when we fight them. Even though the Republicans dominate all the committees now, we have supermajority. We've won most of these over the last few years because Senate Education Committee failed. Just didn't hear the bills. And they can do that. The committee can do that. So what do? You have to really, really work to stop these bills at the committee level. And I'm going to run through, since you may have other kinds of bills you want to oppose. I say again, numbers do count. How do you defeat bad bills? Contact appropriate committee members when the bills are assigned to a committee. Now, as a voter, you are not limited to contacting your own representative or senator. You can send messages to any of them. Now, if you are a constituent, you want to mention that because they pay more attention, perhaps. But we ask, when we oppose bills, send messages or phone calls to all of these members of the committee as soon as the bill is assigned to a committee. And they get lots of opposition. You don't have to write a long, lengthy thing because lots of them won't even read your message. Some do, but most don't. But one thing they do? Their legislative assistants tally it. They keep account, and that can be big. So help us out and help yourself out if you're opposed to other kinds of bills. Number 2, get organizations to respond as an organization. We do that with national organizations and state organizations. We contact secular groups like you and others and ask your members to do the same. We get the state organizations, particularly working with us very strongly, the Oklahoma Science Teachers Association and the Oklahoma Academy of Science, and in past years, the Interfaith Alliances, particularly the Tulsa Interfaith Alliance, much stronger help than Oklahoma City. Americans United separates church and state. We ask the national headquarters of all of those organizations to send letters to the committee, including, if it's a science bill, major scientific organizations, including the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the largest scientific organization in the world. American Institute of Biological Science, other science groups, and they usually respond with an official letter on letterhead and send it in. That helps a lot. And then particularly individual voters in Oklahoma. And when you get hundreds sending in messages, that helps. Lobby directly with legislators, but be respectful. If you go in to some of these legislators and say, I represent the Oklahoma City Atheists, you might get hit in the rear end as the door slammed when you're going out, but not always. I was just telling a story, a few years ago, Bruce Prescott and I were up there lobbying and went into one legislator from Lawton, and they started arguing, and he was a real Christian type, and it got so loud, he's screaming at the top of his voice, I'm going to heaven, and he's fisting in, I'm taking everybody with me, and blah, blah, blah. And Bruce Prescott and he got closer and closer, and I had to go in and separate them. I mean, so you don't know. But they will listen respectfully, even when you know that they're opposed to you. We get a lot of them. Last year we talked to as many as we could, the Republican Senate Education Committee. They listened, and they said, I really agree with you You're right, but I can't vote for it because of my constituents. Now, some of them are using that as an excuse, but some of them are really telling you the truth, and you can tell. So, but speak to your legislators. Get to know your own legislator, Republican or Democrat. Get to know them, and if you support them, give them a little donation. That helps, and I am really pleased with the Norman legislators over the years. Have been really helpful to us, and they've become personal friends. But you don't have to be personal friends to make an impact. And I've already told you about lobbying the governor on the elevator. Write letters. Write letters to editors. Don't have to be long and involved. Or if you're good enough, write an op-ed and see if they will publish it. I've had, I don't know how many letters to editors published, and several op-eds. Even and David Grove does a good job of writing letters, and some of our other people. I've had 2 articles last year, I think it was last year or the year before, and last year, in the Oklahoma Observer on some of these things. One on, well, I won't go into what they were, but similar things. I encourage you to do that. And they get, a lot of them get accepted. Some don't, especially in the Daily Disappointment in Oklahoma City. But I've done it 3 or 4 times, and they published it every time. And you've done it a lot. And they change it, don't they? They changed his. They didn't change mine. They changed some of yours, didn't they?
Occasionally they'll edit it to where it makes no sense.
That's right. But it's worthwhile. I mean, all of this helps, okay? Utilize social media. I put stuff on Facebook along with the addresses, and people come in and say, I've done it. I mean, that's another way you can do this. Facebook is a good one. When you do this, and you go in a lobby and you want to really do it seriously, you want a 1-page statement of your position. 1 page, they won't read more. And do it on colored paper, not white paper. We've been told several times by lobbyists and even legislators, oh, if it's colored paper, I'll look at it. But they get, piles of white paper. That helps, a minor thing. But every little thing helps. Okay. You might have some discussion of these. I'd allow some time for that. The listserv, sign up is back here if you want to sign up for it. You can unsubscribe at any time. You may not. Okay, let's have some questions, discussion, because this goes on and on.
Mention the excellent resources that the OESE webpage has.
Yeah. I did not put that down there somewhere. Oh, it's in my notes. Okay. We have a very, very good website, OESE, Oklahomans for Excellence in Science Education. I meant to bring our brochure and I left some. We got history in there too. A lot of the history, the past history that gives you some idea of what's going on. And in our Facebook, we always put these bills. They're already up, by the way. Some of these first 2 anyway, and who to write and with their addresses, phone numbers, emails, and so on, and a discussion of the bill. The National Center for Science Education covers Oklahoma very, very well because as soon as a bill is filed, we let NCSE know, and they put it out on their national web. And they've already got the 2 creationist bills up on their website.
What's the address, the web address for OESE? Oklahoma Science?
It's not on the handout.
Never mind.
It's there, and so is NCSE. They're worth doing. There are a lot of other blogs. I do a daily blog roll. And there's one. How many of you know the blog, The Sensuous Curmudgeon, besides you? It's good. He covers the creationist stuff all over the country, all over the world. And letters to the editor from creationists, and he makes fun. I mean, he does really, really well. And he really covers Oklahoma. And it's called The Sensuous Curmudgeon. And he's very good. He tries to be anonymous because he fears creationists. But I did some sleuthing, and I know who he is. I know his name. I know his profession, and I know where he lives. And he knows me now. And I'll send him information about Oklahoma, and he will post it up and say, Agent OO He tells me, you've seen that. But there are several really good blogs that cover this kind of stuff too, and they have some really good comments sections too. Okay, comments, questions, discussion.
Another great source is the Secular Coalition for America, and I was just
Yes.
noticing they had something up today. Apparently there's a bill in the U.S. Senate on possibly a Darwin Day. And
Yes, the resolution. It won't get anywhere, but Darwin Day is February the 12th. And that's an interesting thing. There's something called the Clergy Letter Project. Any of you know about that? It's a liberal religious guy that promotes teaching sermons on near Darwin Day in churches. And there are 3 churches in Oklahoma that do, 4 last year, I think, that do that. And he lists them, and he sends them material and so on. So the liberal mainstream religions are very helpful. Very helpful. Not Southern Baptist and a few others. But most mainstream religions have resolutions and official statements accepting evolution. For example, Presbyterian Church, Roman Catholic accepted, except they believe that somewhere along the evolution of humans they were imbued with a soul. Quite a few mainstream religions. How many of you saw the news this week about the United Methodist Church and the Discovery Institute? The Discovery Institute, the main pushers of these academic freedom acts and so on, real bunch of garbage, but they come to OU every once in a while and we give them a real hard time, which they acknowledge. They refer to Oklahomans for Excellence in Science Education as being militant, and we are against them. But the Discovery Institute, the United Methodists had a big national convention, and the Discovery Institute asked for permission to have a table for their literature and all this stuff. And they said no. And this last week, the Discovery Institute has gone utterly ballistic. As of today, they have posted 14 items on their website. I mean, they're just going crazy, about the United. But the United Methodists had a stand accepting evolution long before that. Some churches have no official. For example, Mormon Church, Church of Latter-day Saints, has no official position, but they do teach evolution at Brigham Young. Very well-known evolutionist there. And a former president of the church wrote a letter saying that Mormons should accept it. So, but a lot of other churches are Southern Baptist. I was raised Southern Baptist. And back in the day, ancient times, it was a very different church. I'm no longer a member of the Southern Baptist. But Roger Williams, who founded the Baptist Church and the state of Rhode Island and Providence Plantations when he left the colony in Massachusetts because they told him what to preach and when to preach, he really totally believed in the separation of church and state, and he totally believed in the independence of every congregation. Southern Baptists have left their history, as the mainstream Baptist organizations in southern states are fighting to try to return them. But the mainstream religious faiths really help us in lots of ways. In fact, we have 3 clergy on our board of governors. Presbyterian, Southern Baptist ordained minister, Bruce Prescott, and a former legislator who's associate pastor of the Christian church on 39th over here. Because they help us. And just as non-believers help us, on these things. So being pragmatic politicians, we have to, when we want to kill these bills, we do everything we can to kill these bad bills. Okay, any other things you want to discuss?
What was the clergy organization that you mentioned?
It's called I just named it. clergy project. What clergy project? I just said it. Zimmerman, clergy project. That's the last two. I'll think of it in a minute. In fact, I just got an email about his thing. He even provides information for sermons, for churches to, about evolution. But boy, I tell you, you get in many states, it's just really, you can't argue it. I find it impossible to debate or argue with most real creationists, It's largely a waste of time. Yes?
It's the Clergy Letter Project.
Clergy letter, thank you, you got it, that's it, yeah. What's his name? Not Zimmerman, is it?
Yeah, Michael Zimmerman.
Michael Zimmerman, yeah, he's a good guy, yeah. You get to know these people around the country, at least over the 15 years. I've gotten to know, fortunately, some of the major activists against the creationist bills around the country. And there are other organizations like ours, but not many as active. This listserv that you hear, every state's supposed to have one, organized by the National Center for Science Education and the American Institute of Biological Sciences. Most of them are either inactive or they only send out stuff when there's something to happen. Well, they lose members that way. We have the biggest, by far the largest, and we get praised for it by the National Center for Science Education. It really helps. But every state has one. Some are better than others. Texas has one that's not put out often enough. And the head of that project ran for the state school board and lost miserably. Kansas is very good. And South Carolina has one that's decent. The guy at Charleston College runs and so on. But most states are defunct. And they're missing a boat because one of the best ways to mobilize people is by that listserv. When you got over 1,000 members, you say, please send these letters, and only 2 to 3 dozen respond. That's huge. So that's one thing we hope to keep going. I'm trying to back out of this since I've been doing it so long, but our organization is divided up the duties now. So we have one person that's in charge of social groups, one person in charge of state groups, one person in charge of national groups. And as soon as a bill gets assigned to committee, they go to those groups and say, please send messages for us. And it works.
Mark Dick's in charge of motivation.
Yeah, that's right.
Am I reading this right? Basically, all these bills, we're urging our Congress or our representatives to say nay, because I know sometimes it's yay or nay is that confusing thing on some of these bills. I mean,
Yeah, it's, I get upset. I got upset last year with Nancy Virgin. By the way, after a while, I'm very pleased to report that instead of me calling my senator and legislator, they now call me. And that's really a change. They're good. They're good. Of course, it might help that I contribute to their campaigns, but, nevertheless, they're good people. In fact, my wife is right now attending a fundraiser for Emily Virgin. I asked her, I said, why don't you get up on the floor and make all these points we give you? She asked for points, and she uses them in committee. And I have to tell you one story about this, but she says, nah, all it do is just allow them to get up and throw more garbage at you. And that's true. They on the House floor. They would get more attention than we would. So, so I guess she's probably right. I don't know. Lost my thought here. About speaking up. Anyway, any comments, questions? Sure.
On your listserv, I guess one of the things I really like about the Secular Coalition for America is that they send you, when a bill comes up, they send you a link. You click on it, you type your name, you type your zip code, and it sends the email off for you to your representative or whoever needs to get it. Does your listserv provide that same kind of service? Or
No, and
email addresses to us, or
it lists the emails, the names, the committee members, the email, and the phone numbers. And we do that because, again, we emphasize don't just contact your own representative or senator. Do the whole committee. And that is much more effective than just sending to your own one.
Would you go ahead and like write out a letter for us that we could just sign our name to kind of thing?
That is bad, and I'll tell you why. Anytime you're always getting in the mail, sign this petition, and you sign it and mail it to somebody, they go directly in the trash. They do not like to get form documents sent out. A personal message with just a few comments. 2 or 3 sentences if you don't have time. Now, some of them read the message. They may read them because they know who's sending them. For example, Senator Halligan always answered my emails, but that's not true of most of them.
To find out who's got this, like these different bills when they go into committee, where is that information?
It's on the website.
For the,
Yeah, the website, once you learn to use it, it's okay, but it's cumbersome. It's cumbersome. But you go to the website and you do a search for the bills and put in the number and you can follow it. And better yet, you can sign up so they will send you an email every time there's an action on that bill, which is a neat thing. You got to learn how to do it. It's a cumbersome website, but it works. You can go in and you have to learn how to do it. You can go for text messages. And if you want to see all the bills that have been filed, you click on House bills, either Word or PDF format, introduced. You can do every step of the bills. Click on that and it'll list all the bills. But you got to go through, 3,000 to find it. But you can do the search. And you can search for individual bills. You can search by topic, which kind of works and kind of doesn't. Like starting out, I did the word religion, and I got most of them, but not all the bills. So it's worth using. It's worth knowing. But being notified of actions is really good. If you're really interested in a bill, you can go in and sign up for that, and you'll get emails telling you when action on any given bill. That's the last few years they've done that. But it takes time to learn all this stuff.
the website is, for the state of Oklahoma is what, oklahoma.gov or?
No, just Google Oklahoma House of Representatives, and you'll get it. I don't remember the.
Or you can go to legislature.gov.
Yeah, but then you've got to go.
And then text of measures, and there's
Right.
things in
It's easy to find.
email it to you.
Easy to find. Even if you just do Google Oklahoma Legislature, you'll get the website. And they're pretty good at keeping up with stuff. Now, how do we know whether we're successful or not in the messages? How do we know how many messages? Would you find out? Well, you get a friendly legislator and ask their administrative assistant to keep a tally for you. And they've done that. Senator Sparks, she's really big time on our side. She not only does that, she'll send me messages to alert me about things. And she'll find out information about actions that other people can't. And she keeps a tally. And then last year we had a person in the House do that. That person is no longer in the legislature, so we've got to get some House member. I think Emily Virgins will do it, her assistant. But we lost some good Democrats this session. They're no longer there, and that's not going to help us, especially off the House Education Committee.
I know I've got you as a Facebook friend, and you post up about this stuff all the time, and that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I do.
So I'd encourage everybody in here who's interested in following this kind of stuff, send you a friend request or.
I try to. Like I said, I've been so busy. I'm trying to back out and turn over things I've done to others. They're picking it up
Maybe
as well.
there's other people that you could send it, or does
But that's fine.
does the Oklahoma Science Action and Science Education, do they have a Facebook page for the organization, or is?
No, but the website does exactly what you would do on the website. I mean, every bill and all the information is there on the website. So, but I'd encourage you to do the same thing. If you see mine, share it. You know, spread the word. I mean, it's getting pretty bad. I've forgotten how many Facebook friends I've got now. And it takes me too long to go through. 643 or some ridiculous number. And I don't know some of the people. So now I reject, if I don't know them, I know something about them, I don't accept friend request. It just gets too much. But you as an individual can do a huge amount. A few hours will make a big impact. If you do this, spread the word, get in touch with other groups. If any bills that you don't like, it works. It works. It's getting harder, and that means we've got to get more people involved. Writing letters to editors and op-eds have an effect as well. You know, I've written to the, what is it called? The Durant Daily Democrat. And I've written some blistering ones about Burkine, but, and they published them. That's right, you did too, right, yeah. And surprisingly, we got some good comments back, you know. That helps because his voters, people that vote for him are reading that. So, you know, the local papers as well, but when you hit, you know, Oklahoma City, Tulsa papers, the Oklahoma Observer. How many of you subscribe to the Oklahoma Observer? Anybody? Shame, shame. Costs money. But it is really good. It is a publication that every single legislator reads every issue every 2 weeks. Why? Because our friend, the publisher and editor, has a thing, observerscope or something, and he either praises or darts and dings people. And he'll have a little brief thing praising somebody or darting them. And the legislators look to see if they've been darted. And he darts them very hard. He also has some very good columns by various people, including, what's the Texas liberal political guy? Well known. Anyway, he writes columns, and he has news items, cartoons, very good cartoons. It's worth subscribing to. And they need subscribers to survive. You really don't say, you know, if you can afford it, I would urge you to subscribe. You'll enjoy it. Yeah.
What do you think about that piece of legislation that mandates all adults have to subscribe to a paper and newspaper?
Oh, God.
Well, there is.
That's
one of
right.
our
That's right.
legislators
You're right. I saw that.
wants to make newspaper subscription mandatory for all adults in Oklahoma.
That's right.
Isn't that the craziest thing?
That's right. It's filed by a Republican. It won't, I don't think it'll even be heard, but you know, that's just an example of, I mean, there are lots of other stupid bills. I have only covered a very small number of them. I didn't see any really good ones. I mean, you know, now one thing I'd like to point out, as bad as some people are, Sally Kern being an example, terrible. Every once in a while, she files and gets passed a decent bill. Yes. Yes. Surprise. A child welfare kind of things. Very rare, but she does. I mean, so, you know, even the worst sometimes do something good, but it doesn't outweigh all the bad they do. That's a problem. Yeah. She's just something else, I tell you. She's... How many of you are familiar with the Encyclopedia of American Fools? One person. Go Google it. Go Google it and then search for Sally Kern and Josh Burkine. And they really take them to task. It's really, it's worth looking at. Anybody else you suspect might be a fool will be in there. I'm sure Donald Trump's been covered, but yeah, it's a great place to do it. There's some other blogs that I regularly check. One of the things that I might not want to say to this group, but I'm going to anyway. One of the kinds of people that hurt our politics the most are the new atheist type. They really, 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 I mean, you don't go in and tear down every religion just to be tearing them down. And we can't do that or we would lose. And some of the worst of these, you know, Dawkins, by the way, is not the worst. He's one of the better ones of the new atheists. In fact, in OU, he admitted that he would give the chance of there being a God 1 out of 7 times, which, you know. We like Dawkins, and I have to tell you this story. I don't know if you want me to go on. A few years ago, you may remember he talked at OU. There were like 3,000 people showed up. Well, that's when one of our legislators filed 2 resolutions just before his speech. One against our department because we had a statement about accepting evolution. One of the things we do as an organization, we're trying to get every college in the state to have a statement accepting evolution, and most do. TU does, and you know, OSU, OU. So one criticized OU for having that statement. The other one attacked Dawkins and jumped on OU for inviting him, you know. Well, it wasn't OU, but anyway. So I knew he was visiting. At the same time, a good friend of mine was also visiting here to give a talk. How many of you know the name Nick Matzke, M-A-T-Z-K-E? Probably don't. How many of you are familiar with the Kitzmiller trial in Pennsylvania? A few people. That's the trial where a federal judge ruled that intelligent design was religion and was not science. Big, big win 10 years ago. Well, the hero of that was Nick Matzke, biologist, who trained the lawyers of what questions to ask, and also got subpoenaed the drafts of the intelligent design textbook of Panda and People. And that's where they went through and changed, they had the word creation or creation science. They did a search and replace and just replaced that with intelligent design throughout, the same book otherwise. But they made a mistake. And they left one in there that had the C-R there and the rest of it, which was proof that, you know, they did a search and release. Well, anyway, Nick was there, and I knew they were staying at a bed and breakfast in Norman, and I knew that Dawkins hadn't seen those things. They were having breakfast, so I made copies, and I went to the bed and breakfast to pick up Nick, and there they were having breakfast. Dawkins and his 2 assistants and so on. So I handed him those and told him about it. He looked at them, big smile walked down his face. I'm changing my talk. He told his assistant, who was head of the North American charity of his, go make 250 copies to hand out at the door, which he did. Well, in the meantime, Nick had telling them about our organization and what we did and so on. So I leave, and I'm going to take Nick to an appointment, and my phone rings, and he says, this is Dawkins. I'd like my foundation to give your organization $1,000. Can I announce that tonight? I said, yeah. Then we went to the reception just before his talk, and he came up to me and says, I just contacted my board of directors or whatever, the foundation, and they're upping that to $5,000. And I'm going to talk about it tonight. And he did. He opened up and laughed and made fun of being, you know, attacked by a legislator and everything. And then he mentioned our organization, put up our logo, our website, and said, I'm supporting them, I hope you will too. And then Christmas time, they sent us another $1,500. And that money came at the right time because we were trying to get tax-exempt status. And that cost $2,000 just to apply, with getting somebody to do it. And that came through. So there's some of the anecdotes we've had along the way. So, yeah. Yeah, but back to the new atheist. A lot of the atheists I have no problem with whatsoever in their, respect about religion and their take on religion. But to me, the very worst of the bunch, and there are several of them, but the very worst to me is Jerry Coyne. How many of you know Jerry Coyne? You do. C-O-Y-N-E. I read his blog every day. I love his animal pictures. In fact, he put up the thing where I feed squirrels. I have squirrels trained on OU campus. I call them, they come up, they climb my leg. I have one that'll sit on my knee and I can pet. And now the birds have learned the same thing. But anyway, I sent him that, and he posted it, and I like some of the science is good, but man, he just tears into religion, and it doesn't help the cause. I mean, you know, okay, if you want to believe, that's fine, you believe. You have that right. But he's the worst of the bunch. He came here and meeting when he was president of the Evolution Society, and he was complaining. He stayed in the embassy suites, and he was sending out tweets or something saying, I don't like it. I'm up here, and all I see is flat land. He's over the airport, looking out over the airport. And then he says, nobody's here to carry me to lunch. And Nick Matsky emailed him back and said, I'll carry you to lunch. Now, that's getting way off topic. We could go on all night with stories. Anything else? Comments, suggestions? What can we do better?
Dick, what specifically can this organization do to have influence on bills? I mean, you have that written out, and I'm gonna.
Just what I said. Take the time to send messages on the bills. Only a few minutes. So remember, 2 or 3 sentences. You don't have to, they're not going to, most of them aren't going to read it. That you can all do. And you can get to know your legislators. Mention it to them. If you're really concerned, write letters to the editor. I mean, there's a lot you can do. And a lot of this group has. They've really helped us in the past.
Also, this group needs to be aware that September 23rd, the state capitol, there's going to be a secular lobby day. And
February.
February 23rd.
I need to get that information. Who's sponsoring it?
It's a group out of Tulsa.
Hmm?
It's a group out of Tulsa.
Atheist Community of Tulsa. Yeah, Atheist Community of Tulsa are the main people behind it, but a number of groups are.
They're bringing Dan Barker in for this year.
It's going to be here or in Tulsa?
It's going to be
here.
I need to get information. I've participated in those for several years. AU has done it in the past, and some other groups, but I haven't seen anything for them this year. But I would say, by the way, that AU and ACLU, well, AU's kind of, I don't know, they've kind of diminished in the enthusiasm the last couple of years. But ACLU, Oklahoma ACLU is really, really good. They're very helpful. I know the director, and I know the main legal guy. He's speaking to Cleveland County Democrats next week, I think, the 4th. They're very helpful. Okay. Is it? Thank you for listening.